right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Kingdom Politics Podcast. As usual, we have myself, Pastor Will, and we have Dr. Huffman with us as well. And Dr. Huffman, we have a special guest today. If you want to do the honors of introducing him.
Yes, we have on our podcast today one of my very good friends from the House of Delegates. He's from the 51st District down in Lynchburg, and his name is Eric Zehr. And Delegate Zehr, thank you for taking the time today to be with us. We count it an honor and a privilege for you to take the time out of what we know is a busy schedule to be with us today. Delegate Zehr serves on the Early Childhood and Innovation Committee. He and I got very well acquainted with each other. If we didn't already know each other, we would have known each other after we both got done with the firearms subcommittee this past session.
We spent a lot of time there, didn't we?
Oh, my stars. I think you and I spent, was it almost 6 hours in there? I think it was about from 3 o'clock to almost 7 o'clock. So 3 or 4 hours, actually, 3 or 4 hours in there. So he's on the in the firearms subcommittee. And thank you, sir, for being with us. And we appreciate it very much.
Well, it's my honor. And I know this can be a pretty lively discussion with the three of us, minus the pretty part. And so I just appreciate you letting me be on here with you.
Yeah, Delegate Zehr, he and I met back in the 2025 session. And I have spent a lot of time in his office. His lovely wife, Jody, is his legislative aide. Is that what she is? Is that her official title, Delegate?
Well, she's not official. She runs a lot behind the scenes, makes the office smoothly run. But no, she is not in any official capacity, but I couldn't do it without her.
Okay. She sure makes the office look prettier, I can tell you that.
That's right.
We appreciate Jody very much. I've had opportunities to spend some time with both Delegate Zehr and his wife there in Lynchburg, and appreciate them very, very much. So we want to just ask you some questions today, and just kind of give your take. And first question I want to ask you is, what made you get into politics? What was it that caused you to want to leave the comfort of your business that you own? He is an entrepreneur. He is a capitalist. And what made you want to leave all that to enter politics, especially in the you delegate out of a fairly conservative area? So what made you? What was the desire in your heart to want to leave and enter politics?
So you mentioned, Eric, what made you want to do this? And I have to say, honestly, this wasn't something that I wanted to do. It wasn't something that I had set out to get into, but I'm going to back up a long ways because I believe in God's providence. He's been working this for, all eternity, but specifically it began for me back in Government 101 at Liberty University. So we're talking about 30 years ago. I had grown up in a Mennonite background, not strictly conservative Mennonite, but enough of the Mennonite influence to have this mentality that, civil government is of the devil. It was not something that, or at the very least, it's not something that Christians should be involved in. So that was what was instilled in the back of my mind growing up through my teenage years, but it wasn't quite settling with me. So then fast forward, I'm sitting in Government 101 at Liberty University, and Professor Dr. Kevin Clausen was leading the class, and he made some statement about zoning, and the question came up of whether or not the state really had jurisdiction in zoning, which led to the next question of, well, who ultimately has jurisdiction in the civil realm? And it was that moment I said, I know this guy. I know he's a godly man. I know he fits the criteria for a statesman. I'm going to see what I can do to help him. Next thing I knew, I was sitting out literally in the middle of the night watching yard signs. Because in this campaign, yard signs were being stolen to the tune of about $60 a pop every time. And this was a local race. So there I sat 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, and watching yard signs. Long story short, I went from helping out on that campaign to helping out some more, to next thing I was helping on in other campaigns, and eventually was asked, Eric, would you please consider running? And I gave the logical answer, which was no way. I am not qualified. I'm not there. I'm not ready. This is not something that I'm capable of. And I literally had to decline them 3 times. And then they said, I eventually said, wait a minute, maybe this is a door that's opening. Maybe I should just man up and do it and try it and go for it. So that was the year I ran for the Board of Supervisors here in Campbell County. And lo and behold, I won that seat and spent the next 4 years on the Campbell County Board of Supervisors, learning a lot about how local government runs, learning a lot about how the issues, what the issues are, how funding comes from the state down to the county, how citizens interact with their county. It was also during that time that I chaired the local Republican committee. So I spent 2 years chairing that committee, immensely educational, just really got immersed really quickly into the political scene. Lost my reelection bid by 40 votes. And, so you talk about what's motivating. And I said this to somebody recently. They said they were commenting on how somebody had lost a race. And I said, that's not the worst thing in the world. I said, there's something about losing a race that makes you appreciate and work so much harder the next time because you felt the sting of the loss. And so, God works in all things for the good of those who love him. And that was one thing he worked for my good in. And I said, all right, I've lost this race. I'm done cheering. At that point, I had moved on from chairing the committee. I was still involved in the committee. And I said, thank you, Lord. That was a great experience. I'm going back to just a normal life now. And I spent the next 7 years back working in the business, raising my children, doing all of the normal things. And then one day a friend of mine called and said, Eric, would you please consider running for the House of Delegates? Gave him the same answer. But in the meantime, I had seen other people go through the same experience. So this time I was a little more alert to what door was being opened here. And I said, all right, let me go talk to Jody. We talked, we prayed. And the next thing I knew, I was running for the House of Delegates. And you asked a simple question, and I just gave you a very long answer, but that's what it is.
Very good. Very good. What is the most monumental thing that you think that you've accomplished in the House of Delegates? This past session was your second or third session?
This was year number 3.
Okay.
So third go around. The most important thing that I was able to do this past year, as you know, the Democrats control everything, House,
Correct.
Senate, governor's mansion. There really wasn't a whole lot that Republicans were going to be able to get done legislatively. So one of the most important things we've been able to do this session is, number one, try. So I had 25 bills that we put in. We laid that stake down. We let people know where we stand and what we're pushing for. And then it was about messaging. So we've been very purposeful in getting our message out, letting people know, okay, here's what's going on in your state. This is your state. You need to be involved. You need to be, paying attention to what's happening so that when the next election comes up, people can vote with an education. They can vote knowing what they're getting and what they're wanting.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm noticing of your 25 bills, and this is the difficult part about being a delegate when it's being controlled by the left, is I've noticed that out of your 25 bills, let's see, I'm thinking, I'm looking to me, it looks like to me that about 20 of them failed.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's more like 22 or 23
Is it 22?
failed.
Yeah, you got 23 enacted, 2 tabled, and 1 passed for commending.
But I will say I broke a little bit of a record this year with some of my bills actually lasting a couple of minutes in committee.
There you go.
Last year I had some, I think literally like 30 seconds. They axed it.
Yeah. You got a question, don't you? Will, go ahead.
Yeah. It's, because primarily we're focused on Christians and trying to get this information that is going on at the state level, but also trying to get Christians more involved, because there are people like you, sir, that are standing up for us down in Richmond. And we could help you. And how do we get the disconnect we see in the churches, though, is that it's political. And honestly, the reason we started this podcast was to show people that these are biblical issues, and that we should be talking about these things. So, from your standpoint as a legislator, how do you think we can get more Christians involved in what we're doing, or supporting you in your mission and where God has put you?
I think there's a lot of answers to that question. One of them, since I'm talking with two pastors here, is it begins a lot of it in the church, and just letting people know, look, this is not a taboo sphere of authority. We have the church, we have the family, and we have the civil government. And Christ has jurisdiction in all of those. And he, just as he makes men fathers, he makes men husbands, he makes women wives and mothers, and he puts people in places in the church, and he puts people in places in the civil authority as well. In fact, the majority of the books of the Old Testament were written to, from, or about a civil magistrate.
Yes, sir.
And you read in the New Testament, Christ has so much to say about the civil government. This is an area that he cares about, and he wants his people to be involved in. So that, I think, has to be the message that's gotten out into the churches. And like I said, I grew up with a heavy influence of, no, somehow civil is of the world, and we're not supposed to be involved in it. But that is simply not taught in Scripture. It's not what Jesus, calls us to.
Yeah, what we've tried to, and what we are trying to, in both this podcast, our websites, our meetings that we have as we travel the Commonwealth and hold meetings in churches and different events, what we're trying to establish with the Christians is that God is the ordainer of government, which you have already said, and we already know from the book of Genesis that he is. And we already know from the book of Romans chapter 13 that the civil government has two responsibilities only, and those two responsibilities are to protect the good and to punish the evil. Those are their dual responsibilities. We're trying to let Christians know that you must be involved. It's not really an option for believers to decide whether they do or don't want to be involved. Now, that doesn't mean you have to run for office, but that does mean, Delegate, that I think you would agree with this, that you have to be informed about your legislature, your legislators, and your legislation. And how y'all like? I just came up with just came up with that. And
it's yours, Pat.
That's why you get paid the big bucks.
And I think that you have to have knowledge of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. It's we wouldn't say, and I've heard this statement made before, well, politics is corrupt and therefore Christians should stay out of it. But wait a minute, there are churches that are corrupt. I hate to say it, we have to be honest. There are some churches that just are corrupt. So what are we going to do? Are we going to jettison the church, and are we just going to hunker down in our homes? Oh, but wait a minute. Some homes aren't being run very well either. And there's some fathers who aren't doing their job very well. So do we jettison the family? We're called as believers to be salt and light. And as much as Christians have stayed out of the political arena, it's no wonder it seems to be, more corrupt than the other areas. But this is part of taking dominion. Is we are going to take dominion in this area. We're going to take dominion in the church. We're going to take dominion in the state, because this is what we're called to.
Yeah, man, that fired me up. That's what we're trying to do, is get Christians to understand that this is not an area to retreat from. This is an area in which the church has retreated from, but it's also our obligation to go back into the arena like you have, and then us supporting people like you that are running for office. Because I hear the same thing too. I will hear, because we do, like tonight we have Christ and Culture Night, and I do those once a month, and we talk about various different issues. And almost after every single one of them, people will come to me and say, well, Pastor Will, I totally get what you're saying. I totally get the theology. But why would I vote for this Republican, or why would I vote for, you know what I mean? And it's, okay, well then we have to fix what's going on then. it doesn't mean we just get to quit just because it's hard right now.
I've heard it's been said several times, you can't legislate morality.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as I'm sitting there on the House floor, and Dr. Huffman's smiling here because he goes through the same thing. We get these bills the night before and we're looking through them. I know I am looking at all of these bills through a particular lens.
Mm-hmm.
There is no such thing as a piece of legislation that does not have some morality or ethics behind it, because we're all grasping for that standard. It's just a matter of whose standard are we going to use? What measure are we going to use to measure whether this is right or wrong? Absolutely. If we as the church stay out of politics, we've abdicated that to somebody else, to some other standard. And believe you me, there are a lot of standards that are ready to fill in there. Whether it be secular humanism, whether it be communism, whether it be Islam, whether it be Buddhism, whatever, there's going to be some ethical, moral guidance to determining what is good legislation and what is not.
Yeah, I totally agree. I hear that a lot too. Wow, you can't legislate morality. And I always look at a person who tells me that. And I'm like, well, what do you think they're doing?
Right.
It's literally what they're doing. Everyone is. Every law that's ever been passed.
Legislation is somebody's ethics and morality imposed on the rest.
Correct. Yes, sir. I agree.
But what I can tell you is, as I look at different cultures throughout history, and as I look at the cultures today and the nations today, I would rather be here in this culture, which has been so influenced by Christianity, than anywhere else.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we were you and I were talking offline the other day, Dr. Huffman. When I was growing up, I wasn't a Christian, and I grew up in the 90s. I absolutely benefited from a Christian society, though.
For sure.
Yeah, I absolutely was able to do what I did, and we had kind of a tough goals.
And imagine trying to live in a culture that didn't have the same norms of justice and equity and these high and lofty ideals, and seeing injustice on a day-to-day basis would just rip you apart. You wouldn't be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
And when I find that people say, especially people like pastors or somebody like that, say, well, you can't legislate morality. I find that what they're trying to say is, well, Dr. Huffman, people aren't saved because they vote morality or vote conservative issues.
Yeah.
Well, that's not even the point. And that's not even the point of the statement that you can't legislate morality, because like you guys have said, every bill is moral.
Mm-hmm.
There is no such thing as an immoral piece of legislation. The abortion amendment, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, in just a moment, is one of the most anti-moral pieces of legislation that I have come across in years, along with the same-sex marriage amendment. So every piece of legislation is either moral or immoral. I don't believe there's amoral, because, like you said, Delegate, it's somebody's morality is seen in that. And I want to bring up a bill that can be seen as amoral. Okay, it's HB 1207. It was patroned by Delegate Brianna Sewell, and that is the family paid and medical leave insurance program that was overwhelmingly passed by the House and the Senate. Actually, I say overwhelmingly down party lines, but that is her morality. Now, this could be seen as an amoral piece of legislation, because the way that it has been crafted by the left is, we're trying to give the hardworking people of the Commonwealth up to 12 weeks of paid medical leave if they need it. We're trying to give them this insurance, this safety net. The Republicans, when they were in power, they never did anything like this. So now that we are in power, we're trying to make sure that the hardworking people of the Commonwealth have this guaranteed money. But Delegate, what they're not telling people is it's $375 million just to start the program. And how is that going to be paid back? Well, it's estimated that, of course, it's going to be, as you well know, and what you actually spoke up against in session on the House floor, is that basically what this is a new tax item on your payroll tax, and that it is estimated by 2031 that this Commonwealth would have collected $1.54 billion in taxpayer deductions from people's paychecks. Now, I don't care what planet you live on, which I'm not sure what planet some progressives are living on, but I'm not sure what planet you live on. That's a lot of money. Now, this is seen as amoral, but I think Breonna Sewell's morality in this bill is misplaced and immoral, because while she at one hand is wanting to promote herself as looking after the hardworking citizen of Virginia, all the while knowing of the money that it's going to cost Virginians to have this program.
And what she's not mentioning is it's not her money. It's not the state's money to begin with. It's the people's money. That's money that's being taken from the government and redistributed. So now we can question, is this a breach of the, the seventh commandment, thou shalt not steal? If it is not a legitimate function of government to do in the first place, then it very much, you can make the argument that this is immoral. Let me back up a little bit. I want to come back to this bill, but we were talking about legislating morality, and we were talking about big picture, just framework thoughts. There is a value in the political realm of normalizing. So if something is a law, a lot of times I've heard young people say, well, it can't be that bad because it's legal. And so there is this aspect to civil laws and legislation that normalizes behaviors, that normalizes ideas, that normalizes morality for people in a way that I think God's put this in our DNA. It's part of the human design that we look at what is supported by the civil magistrate, and we're, in a sense, whether we believe it or know it or not, we're looking to the civil government for some guidance in right and wrong.
That is a really good point. I think you're right about that.
So back to, and I don't remember what the House bill, the number was, but the paid family leave. There's
1207. It's really important, and I want to, because a lot of people don't do this, Will, Delegate. It's really important that when you look at bills, you look at the physical impact statement. In other words, what we mean by that is, what's this going to cost for us to have? And I'm looking here under the physical impact statement of the enrolled piece of legislation. Yeah. And on the payroll taxes collected, now, of course, this doesn't have an enactment date until 2028. But it's estimated on this fiscal impact statement, $368 million, Delegate, of payroll taxes collected. Now, the left is wanting to portray this as some gift. In fact, I never one time heard, you correct me if I'm wrong, sir, because you're closer to it than I am. I never one time heard anybody on that side of the aisle ever admit that this was a payroll tax. But yet the fiscal impact statement says it's $368 million of payroll taxes in just 2028. 1.471 billion by the fiscal year 2029, 1.51 billion fiscal year 2030, and 1.548 billion by fiscal year 2031. But I don't ever remember them admitting that this was a payroll tax. Am I correct in that, sir?
And well, I think you are correct. But even if we were to get the left to use those terms, payroll tax, even if we were to get them to say those words have so little meaning, I think, anymore, because we're just so used to hearing about taxes. We're just so used to hearing that term payroll taxes. We're just so used to having, every week I'm writing out payroll for my guys, and for every dollar they earn, I'm taking 23 cents out of that dollar, and I'm sending it to one, place of government or another, whether it be to the federal government, whether it be to Medicaid, Medicare, to the state. we've gotten so used to this that I think it's become normalized. So now when we say payroll tax, it doesn't register in people's minds that, wait a minute, what's in essence happening here is my government is telling me that I am going to go to work for them for a certain amount of time because that money is time, and they're going to take what I would normally expect to earn for working. So I'm working for the government, and they will give me that back partially if they determine I'm worthy of it, or if they decide they want to give that back to me. And we've got to, I think, get people to start to think in those terms. If you're going to work for 23% of the time you're working for the government, and I think that puts us at what, April? We've all heard about this before, where you're basically working the first 4 months of the year for the state or for the government.
Right.
And now here we are, we're going to add a significant amount more onto that. So, we can get to a place where I understand this was years ago when I was talking to a Canadian, and he said, Eric, over half of the time that I'm working, and this was a Canadian citizen, he said, I'm working for my government because their tax rate is at that time, I think it was like 52% that every Canadian could expect to pay. We're inching ever closer to that. I mean, when we're looking at adding the significant amounts that you just mentioned, in the millions and the hundreds of millions of dollars, we're inching, if not using a yardstick, to get closer and closer to full-on socialism.
Yeah. And that was just, and the numbers I was giving, Will and Delegate, that was just payroll taxes. That doesn't include the $64 million startup costs for the computer and then the IT systems that it's going to cost. Where's this money coming from? Well, if you read the bill, and you probably remember this, Delegate, it's going to come from a line of credit.
Yeah.
The Commonwealth has got to take out a line of credit to start up this program. And so who's going to pay back the line of credit with interest?
Yeah. So
the hardworking people of Virginia.
Exactly. The people that are being told they're going to benefit, but every program that government runs, they're taking their cut out of it. So for every dollar that a citizen gives to fund that program, they're going to get cents back, not dollars back, but cents.
Yeah.
And what did Ronald Reagan say? What did Ronald Reagan say years ago was the 9 most frightening words? I'm here from the government and I'm here to help.
Yeah.
Well, that bill in particular, I think, goes to show why people need to do the research and pay attention to what's going on, because way back when you and I were in Richmond together and we did the show from the room there in Richmond, I posted us talking about this bill, and people really let us have it on that we were wrong about this. But again, it's people that, because on the surface it sounds good. We're going to give you money. We're going to let you take time off work. And again, where's all this coming from? Well, the government is letting you do that. That should automatically make you double take. But most people won't. And so, but then again, you dig into the costs of this thing. It's like $70 million or something like that for just the computer to run the thing.
It reminds me a lot of the social services or Social Security at the federal level, and look how well that's gone. So why not replicate it here at the state level?
Yeah, you and I were talking about at lunch today that the definition of insanity, doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
Well, we're going to get it right this time.
Yeah. Well, speaking, we should look at the budget and get your thoughts, Delegate, on what's going on with the budget crisis, if you don't mind, because we are staring down the first time ever in the history of the Commonwealth where we might have a government shutdown.
It's crazy. We were supposed to have voted on this by March. I think it was March the 14th. So we're pushing like 90 days out. And I think we're we're in the teens, maybe 19 days till government shutdown if we don't get a budget in place. And I'm hearing talk of potentially a skinny budget and potentially continuing resolutions. And we've never been here as a state. Now, wait a minute. You've got one party in charge here. So it's not like you have Republicans fighting Democrats over this thing. It's just one party, and they can do whatever they want with this budget. think about it this way. We've been out of session since March 14.
Yeah.
By that point, they had failed to produce a budget for us to vote on. So they've had for the last 3 months one fundamental task to complete, and that is get a budget together, appropriate the taxpayers' money. And they haven't been able to do that one fundamental function. And we inch closer and closer to a government shutdown, which I'm not even sure what a skinny budget looks like. We've never been here before. It's not like I can look it up and say, okay, what core functions get funded and how much do they get funded and to what extent. But what's happening at the local level, your sheriff's department, EMS, your schools, all these folks are trying to get their budgets together for the next year, and they're already behind and they can't do it. School systems are looking at hiring. They've got to be getting those contracts in place pretty quickly here, and they don't know how much money they're going to have. So it's not just a funny political game that we're watching. It is a political game, but it isn't funny because there are real life ramifications to this.
Yeah, Dr. Huffman and I talk about this a lot. I think part of our problem is we're just not serious. Like you made a great point that this isn't, I mean, it is a political game, but it's not funny. And I think part of the problem we have is we're just not that serious of a people anymore. Like I hear people say, well, the budget, like whatever, just let the government close. Well, no, no, we need the government open. They should have passed the budget. Why are we not getting this done? Because we're playing these nonsense games. I don't know. It goes back to the voting thing too. Like we need serious people running for office that are serious about doing something, and not just going there because you get to be a delegate, but going there because the Lord has given you this ability and this platform. And what is the ultimate goal of that, right?
Yeah. You mentioned something a moment ago, Delegate, that I think our viewers may need some clarification on. Maybe they don't, but for those of you who do, Delegate Zehr mentioned a CR or continuing or continuing resolution. A continuing resolution basically is when the government can't come with a budget. You may have to clean up my way I'm describing this, Delegate, but my everyday explanation of when the government fails to create a budget, they basically raise their own debt ceiling and kind of just throw out a number for the next 6 months. We're going to operate. That's what they do in Washington.
Yeah,
there are 12 appropriation bills that have to be passed. Defense and education and all these other things. And when they can't come to an agreement, then they just pass a CR and they say, they raise a debt ceiling. Basically, what that means is they give themselves a credit increase of $5 billion to take them through to the next 6 months. And hopefully by then we can come with something. Well, they don't. So then they do another CR. I mean, how many CRs have we been? I mean, how many years have we been going under CRs from Washington? And I'm afraid, Delegate, that if we start this, and it would not surprise me that it would not start with a Democrat-led House, Senate, and executive, but I'm afraid that if we get ourselves into the habit of doing CRs, then it's just going to kind of become the easier thing to do than to actually pass a budget.
And it's not just the budget. It's not just the continuing resolution. It's not just the impact this year to budgets, but it's also our bond rating. So the state's constantly borrowing money for this project and for that project. And if we get into continuing resolutions, we can pretty much expect that we're going to start, our bond rating is going to go down, which means
interest rates go up.
The taxpayer is going to be paying more in interest. So this thing compounds. It's not like you can just say, okay, we messed up over here, we can fix that. No, you lose your bond rating, now you're paying more in interest. That reduces the budget, increases the budget, which means more taxes, but less money for the programs that we've already begun running. Which reminds me, one of the good things that might come out of this is realizing what portions of government we may not need. If we have to start, cutting, we may force the progressives may force themselves into a situation where they're going to have to make some tough cuts, and we may realize, maybe we didn't need that after all.
Yeah, that'd certainly be a silver lining of it. That's for sure. That is for sure. But yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, sort of like, just to kind of put it in everyday language, it's sort of like, um, when I was doing some marriage counseling one time years ago, the couple that were getting married they were already trying to buy something together. They weren't even married yet. Of course, you can do that in these days. And the groom did not understand why he couldn't get a loan. He said, "I've got all this credit, but I can't get a loan at a good interest rate." And I said, "That's why you can't get a loan at a good interest rate, because you owe everybody." "Well, I make my payments on time, but yeah, you still owe everybody. Yeah. Therefore, and when you try to get more credit, your interest rate's going to be higher."
Yep.
And it's the same thing that Delegate Zehr is talking about with the Commonwealth. The more we owe, we lose our bond rating or our credit rating, and then everything goes higher. If it goes higher for the Commonwealth, then it goes higher for the people that pay to have all these programs and just to watch the government mismanage the money.
Somehow we tend to think that the laws of nature are suspended for government, that somehow you can spend what you don't have, and somehow, you can just keep borrowing and the government can, dish out and hand out, and it doesn't cost anybody anything, because even the way that we speak in terms of, well, we, the government, are going to do this for.
Right.
The government doesn't it doesn't produce anything. All the government, and we're talking state government here, and so all the state can do is take money from one person and redistribute it, in essence, to another. And so it boils back to that question of what is right and what is wrong. What is a legitimate function of the government? If it's a legitimate function, that's what we pay our taxes for. If it's not a legitimate function, I'm going to protest, because we shouldn't be spending our money, your money, the taxpayers' money there.
Yeah. And I think that's part of with the left. So I guess we can move into the 2A stuff, because I know that you've posted some stuff on social media about that. And now I think the count is up to 10 Commonwealth attorneys and or sheriffs.
I think you're right. Well, I think it's 10. It's 10 or so Commonwealth attorneys, plus there's half a dozen, 7 or 8 sheriffs who've made that stand and said, no, I swore an oath to the Constitution, and I can't abide this.
Well, it was interesting on this note. VAIB, we're getting ready to produce a video on this. It's interesting what Cleo Powell, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Virginia, did yesterday. She exercised her powers pursuant to Section 8.01 of the Statute of Virginia, and she created 4 legislative or judicial bodies across the state. I think it's Washington County, Fauquier County, Spotsylvania County, and I can't remember the 4th county. But anyways, 4 counties across the Commonwealth to hear. She set up judges in these courts to hear and settle on all these 2A injunction requests. Now here you've got the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Cleo Powell, who was one of the 3 justices who sided for the constitutional amendment.
Right. She
comes back and says, okay, okay, I lost that battle, so here's what I'm going to do pursuant to 8.01 of the Statute of Virginia. I'm going to set up courts with judges that's going to hear all these injunctions. Now, I wonder what biased judges she found for those courts. So, Delegate Zehr, do these injunction hearings even have a chance of getting a fair hearing, or are we looking at these probably going to the United States Supreme Court as well, who has, by the way, already decided on this at least 4 times?
Yeah.
You were talking about bias, and I think we're getting to a place of recognizing that even in their justice system, everybody has a bias, and it's great that we're able to acknowledge that. It's not so great that it's quite so obvious in our judicial system. But I had, it was at least 1 or 2 of these gun bills that came across the House floor, and I remember telling my colleagues, this is unconstitutional and it will be settled in the court of law. And I even pointed to some very obvious, and I'm not an attorney, but some very, even I'm able to see, look, the Bruin case says you can't do this. You can't you can't just arbitrarily say X number of rounds and now you can't have that weapon to defend yourself. And I think it was the court maybe in the District of Columbia that pointed out, well, if we allow legislatures or we allow cities or any local governing body to determine the number of rounds that a weapon can handle, we will very quickly end up right back at muskets, because that's what they had when they were framing this Constitution. Yeah. And because if you can say, well, we're going to cut it off at 15 rounds, and you can cut it off at 10 rounds, then you can cut it off at 5 and then 1. And then, well, wait a minute, maybe we don't even need center fire anymore. Just, pack your muskets. And by the way, you're on your own to make gunpowder, because we're going to make that illegal. Hey, Daniel Boone did it.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. I mean, the courts have been very clear. I mean, when I was in committee with you and Delegate Oates, and I got to admit that when you go to some committees, you're facing down the barrel of the enemy. And I don't know if I told you and Delegate Oates this that day, but looking up from my chair and seeing you two on the committee, it was almost like seeing seeing good friends before that I had to speak before, and it really, really did calm me because I knew that I was facing down the barrel. Even Darius Clark, the chairman of that subcommittee, is a was a fairly respectful person, even those positions that disagreed with him. But I can remember talking about Delegate Helmer's HB 217, and I'm sure you remember very clearly, Delegate. First thing he got up to say when he was explaining the bill was not really to explain the bill, but was to make an emotional statement. Well, I just don't think Virginians ought to be killing each other. Well,
yeah.
Well, duh. I mean, nobody thinks anybody should be killing each other, and that's not what us pro 2A people believe. And so of course that spurred me to get up to say, because I had of course read his bill, and at the time it was 10 rounds was considered an assault rifle. At the time, it was amended to 15,
right?
But at the time it was 10. And I remember, and of course, Delegate Helmer is a veteran. He served in Iraq. He's a graduate of West Point. He's a colonel in the reserves, and his resume really makes you. Why are you so anti-gun?
Right.
With his resume, but and I remember getting up in committee and saying, Delegate, we're not talking about weapons of war. You didn't invade Baghdad with 10 bullets, did you? Of course you didn't. So we're not talking about weapons of war that people want to carry on the street. We're talking about guns that the Constitution, our founding fathers, said that we could carry. And Richard Henry Lee was the brains behind the Second Amendment of the rights. He's from Virginia, and they all the good ones are from Virginia. Did you know that, Will?
Yeah, back then.
Will's not from Virginia.
No, I am from.
Are you from Virginia?
Yes, I'm from Bedford.
Oh, are you really? Well, you down.
I just left for a while when I was active duty.
Okay, that's why. Okay, that's right. That's right. That's right. You that's how I got my wires crossed there. But yeah, back then. And he said, if you read Richard Henry Lee's statements about the Second Amendment, he said that the militia meant the people.
Yeah,
because I had right after that committee meeting, I had this one guy come up to me and just really get in my face and challenge me on my interpretation of Bruin, on my interpretation of the Second Amendment. And he said the founding fathers were talking about a militia, and I told him, I said, sir, Richard Henry Lee, who was the brains behind the Second Amendment, said the militia are the people. The people. That's why he included both terminologies in the Second Amendment.
And Pastor, I want to go down a little rabbit trail, or maybe we're going to drill in a little bit deeper here on a statement you just made, that in the committee, you remember it being an emotional argument. And then you got up, and I still remember you getting up to that podium because, like you said, you looked up at myself and Delegate Oates and Delegate Wilt, and you felt like, wow, I've got some friends here. And you came to the podium and used logic.
Yeah.
You had a basis for your arguments. You had a standard. And I think that's part of what's missing is with so many elected officials is they don't have that grounding. They don't have a basis. And so now we're back to that question of legislating morality. Well, whose morality? What standard? Where do you begin with? And when you don't have an objective standard of morality, and we Christians, we have Scripture. We look at Scripture. Everything is filtered through the lens of Scripture, so we can make those logical arguments. We don't have to appeal to emotions to try to manipulate people into thinking a certain way or feeling a certain way in order to get their support. But we can actually use logic and look at this is right and this is wrong. And, and so that's been one of the things that I've seen consistently is when you get to the end of logic and when you can't use that anymore and you can't point to nature or nature's laws, you can't point to some objective standard outside of yourself, you have to resort to manipulation.
Yeah.
What is it? That's kind of the question I was going to ask you, sir, is, especially when you were the one giving hey, these are unconstitutional. This is going to cost us money because it is going to cost us money, the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
What can we do other than what these Commonwealth is I understand they're standing up, but I guess that's my question is where the logic is gone. How do we best interact? Because I've tried to, in the Christian world, I've tried to talk to progressive pastors, and I use that term pastor loosely. It doesn't go well. It's usually very short. They get really upset with me, and I'm very respectful and nice, and I can argue the Bible till I'm blue in the face. But what is it like, being on the floor and telling them, hey, this is going to cost us money?
And it's not just that it's going to cost us money, but constantly coming back to the fact that this isn't our money. This isn't ours to be spending. This money belongs to somebody. Somebody is having to go out every day and work to produce this money. Mm-hmm. We are fiduciary stewards of that. That's all we are, we are stewards. And so again, it comes back to, is this a legitimate function of government? And in this case, the travesty here, well, many travesties, but one of them is this is a way the left is using our taxpayer money to get votes for themselves, because they know this is unconstitutional. They know it's going to be challenged in court. So they know it's going to cost money. In this case, the state is using taxpayers' dollars to defend themselves in court. The goal here is to get votes from the left, is to appease their base, is to let their people say, oh yeah, oh thank you, you went out, you tried to take guns from everybody, we're anti-gun, so you tried, you really did it. Wow. And they're going to put that on their campaign mailers that I tried, and this terrible Supreme Court knocked it down, but boy, we worked at it. Did not cost them a dime, but it cost the taxpayers, and then it costs those of us who believe in our Second Amendment, who want our rights. It cost us to go out and defend this.
Yeah, I didn't think about it like that. I don't know. I was watching a sports game the other night, and why YouTube TV thought I lived in Maryland, I'm not sure, but I saw a political commercial for Maryland. I don't know who the person was. I halfway agreed with most of it. They wanted better housing. They wanted to bring down their utility bills, and it wasn't that bad of a commercial. But then at the end, they shoehorned in, and I'm going to fight Trump. And I was like, why did you put that in? You had such a nice, like you had a good platform there.
And, and that has seemed to be all Democrats in Virginia have going for them right now, is they don't like Trump, and they're just trying to, and that's how they won last fall. They won on the anti-Trump sentiment. But if you look at their policies, you look at their platforms, they have nothing. All they can do is say we're fighting against Trump. So
remember in the 2025 reconvene session, every Democrat that stood up to speak against the many vetoes of Governor Youngkin, every one of them that stood up to speak, somewhere in their speech said somebody is too afraid of Trump.
Yeah, you have to shoehorn that in there for a reason.
Eric, Delegate Zehr, you remember every
single
speech In fact, it got so ridiculous that Nick Freitas stood up and said, "Why don't we create a video montage of every time the Democrats spoke up and said something bad about Trump? It'd be hysterical. I'd pay to produce it because
Right.
every time they got up to speak, it was something in their speech. Somebody's too afraid of Trump. Yep, somebody's too afraid of Trump. I get the basic civics that some times they need to remember on the left side in Richmond is there's a difference between federal and state government.
I don't know that they know that.
I don't think they do.
Everything is just, well, we're going to stand up to Trump, and odd platform.
When you don't have a platform, when you don't have policies that people want, when you don't have a program, and when you're failing, it's great to be able to point at something else, somebody else. Oh, look over there. Don't look at what we're doing here, because they are failing Virginia. And if Virginians knew it and paid attention to it, they would not get reelected. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do. So, what is a path forward? I guess we got to close here in a minute, and we can do plugs and all that good stuff. But what do you see as a path forward, if I could speak? Particularly getting Christians more energized about being part of the culture, because, both of us go and speak, and we're going to speak later tonight at an event, and what can people do to help, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because that's what people will come and ask me is, people will get fired up. They'll hear one of us speak or what we got going on tonight with Christ and culture, and people will get fired up. But then we need a place to send those people. You know what I mean? Like a follow-on actions. Like, how can we help yourself and the other delegates that are standing for us?
Tons of ways. Let me start. The big picture here, though, is what we're doing right now is a big part of it. We're getting that information out. You as pastors teaching the church that, yes, this is a legitimate, aspect to your Christianity. It's something that you should be involved in, something you should be doing. And then I'm going to continue to be on Facebook, Instagram, and X, getting that message out of what's really happening in Richmond. And so there's one minor practical thing is people can follow, they can like, they can share, they can comment. All of that gets that message further down the road to more people. And a lot of times it's the likes and the follows and the shares aren't for the person who's liking, following, and sharing. It's so that those folks who are following you or who are in your circles then get the same message. So that's a big piece of it. Let's get the message out. But also, don't be bashful to get involved in your local committee, your local Republican committee. Anybody, you can go online, look up whatever county you're in, whatever city you're in. That's often a good place to start. Contact your legislator, contact your local board of supervisors, contact your local city council, town council, whatever, and find out what's going on, educate yourself, and then get behind and try to help those folks that are doing a good job, that are, needing that support. And it can be anything from, hey, I just need, I need a few hours of your time on a Saturday. We're going to go, knock on some doors, or, hey, I need some help getting this done in the background at an event that we're putting on, or whatever. There's a lot of activity going on, a lot of ways to get involved, but that is the main thing. Is just, I would recommend start by tagging somebody who is already actively moving in this realm, and that you believe in, that it's doing the right thing, and just try to get on board there.
That's great advice. Another person that's social media, I had to be convinced to do it.
My wife was on me for years. She said, Eric, you need to be on social media, and finally started doing that. And I've really enjoyed that platform, because we've got an opportunity in front of us right now with the demise of legacy media. Mm-hmm. We can now go directly to folks with a message that isn't going to be filtered out, isn't going to be twisted. We can go just straight to you. You don't have to wait for CBS, NBC, whatever, to twist it, and then you're wondering, are you really getting the truth here or not?
Right. Yeah, that's another great point. I just continue to be wrong about my previous beliefs, because we started the podcast some time ago, and but I'll leave any last questions for you.
Well, I just real quick, we got like 3 minutes, Delegate Zehr, and I wanted to give out your contact information, if I may.
Sure.
Okay. Anyone who wants to contact Delegate Zehr, you can do so by emailing his legislature email. As soon as I bring it back up here, caught me not thinking. It's Delegate E. Zehr, that's DELEZEHR at house.virginia.gov. If you ever have any questions or concerns, especially if you live in District 51, just email him there. And I know, based on experience, he will answer you back. And so he's one of the ones down there that actually will answer your emails back. So that's DEL, the letter EZEHR at house.virginia.gov. And as we think about the amendments that are coming up in November, I know we didn't get a whole lot of time to spend on those because of all the other issues that are going on as well. I wanted to quote from the Declaration of Independence and quote from the, we're told by the left that the founding fathers were agnostics, they were atheists, they were deists, and the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence are secular documents and should not have any place within religion or Christianity. But yet the first portion, the first paragraph of the Declaration says, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station, and here's the part I like they got from William Black, to which the laws of nature and nature's God has entitled them. The laws of nature and nature's God. And that flies in the face, Delegate, of what Tim Kaine said and what so many on the left say, that our rights do not come from God, they come from the government. In fact, when Speaker Mike Johnson said the other day that our rights come from God, they had a field day with him on MSNBC about that, and then I turned around and had a field day with them on a video that I had produced on the VAIB's Facebook. But that is really the case, and that was the heart of our founding fathers, was the law of nature and nature's God. And if you think about the law of nature, so people say, well, how does that work with the amendments? The law of nature says two men can't be together. The law of nature says two women can't be together. And nature's God, the Word of God says it as well. And that was Blackstone's idea of the laws of nature and nature's God. Okay, the laws of nature, the biology of nature coincides with nature's God, which is the Word of God. And so when you think about these amendments and the opening statement of the Declaration, they really fly in the face of especially the two amendments that are becoming in November.
And here we've come full circle back to this place where we are recognizing that if the state were to be able to give out rights, that would make the state God. But in fact, the state is not God. There is a God who delegates that authority to men to steward that authority.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah. I guess well, you always have an open invitation, Delegate. We can do the amendments. I mean, we did 3-4 separate episodes just with one apiece. But we want to honor your time, sir. Anything you want to plug, or where people can find you on Facebook and the socials?
Yeah, please do. Please follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, X. Just look up my name, Eric Zehr, House of Delegates, and share and let's get. I'm putting messages out there of what's going on in the state pretty regularly, and so the farther and wider we can spread the message, the better. Yeah,
and you can follow VAIB, please, on social media. VAIB Sutherland. Sutherland is spelled Hutherland. That's VAIB Sutherland. Follow us there. Follow us on Instagram. And then you can email me at director@vaib.org. Would count it an honor to correspond with you there. And then I'm going to let Will plug the Kingdom Politics.
Yeah, so we launched something new. We're trying to get Christians more organized and together. So if people go to the kingdompolitics.org, and then at the top it says there's a tab for Get Involved. and there you can fill out a form. It'll send all the information to myself and Dr. Huffman, and we are trying to get people organized. We are asking for people that want to be part of the prayer team, but then we're asking people to just help where they can. So if all you can do is send an email to a delegate, that's great. Let us know in the message form, and we will put you on the list that is for emails. And so when things come up, we can count on you to send emails. If you want to go to Richmond with us, great. We'll put you on that list, and we'll let you know when we need things like that. We want to get a little bit more organized as Christians, so that we can help and be involved. And then all of the socials and everything for us are on that website. But if you go to that website and you click on the Get Involved, that's brand new. I just launched it on the site last night, and people can get involved so we can help people like our good friend Delegate Zehr here while he's fighting the good fight. He knows he's not alone. There's a whole bunch of us with him. But we need to be organized about how we're with them, because we're a little disjointed right now. So that's my plug. Oh, and we got a newsletter on there as well. You can just put your email in there as well. That's easy. But the other one's more important. Getting involved, way more important. And we're asking people to just get involved with what you can. If you've got kids and you're busy and you work all the time and you can't come down to Richmond with us, we totally get it. But we can send emails. And that helps a lot more than people think. So that's it. Anybody last words?
Thank you, Delegate, for your time.
And I was going to thank you for your work here. This is so important. This is so encouraging to know I've got Christian brothers that are working behind the scenes, that are organizing, and we know that we're not alone, and we know the battle is won, and we get to participate in this winning battle.
Amen.
Amen. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Anytime you want to come on, you let us know. But we both have a lot of respect for you, and
amen.
Like I said, we're working hard in behind the scenes to try to get some more support for you guys, because I've seen it, not as many times as Dr. Huffman, but I've seen what you guys are up against, and I get it. All the strength comes from the Lord, but I also know that Paul says we're supposed to help each other. Yeah. We're supposed to carry each other's burdens, and what we are looking at right now is a big burden.
Yeah,
and we got to stand together. So. Okay.
Did you want to end with Spurgeon again?
Oh yeah, let's do Spurgeon.
You'll like this, Delegate.
We got a Spurgeon quote and a little song that goes with the Spurgeon quote. But I hope everyone has an awesome day. So we'll close with this. And
thank you, Delegate.
Thank you.
Thank you, brothers.
Oh, I gotta hit play. I'll edit that part.
And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" And I said, "Here am I. Send me."
Rise up, Christ one, only bow to his throne. Satan, trying to temper, he ain't loud in my home. All fact, keep it real, spirit send me now.